Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. On today's show, I have Frank DeMeltz, and Frank is he's the author of The Blueprint, which is subtitled The Bible for Becoming a Successful Performing Artist in the Digital Age. He's an engineer. He's head of A&R artist development. He does work in music publishing. We got a whole lot to talk about. I think this is... this book, The Blueprint, is just so cool because it goes through pretty much everything. Like if you want to get a life in music going, he starts pretty much from the beginning with the equipment, how to record, to copywriting, all the way to publishing, licensing, touring, all sorts of good stuff. And even great advice on just like rehearsing and singing and little things that often get missed along the way. So it's pretty... extensive and thorough. So, Frank, welcome to the show. Excited to talk to you, man.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good to have you. The Blueprint is pretty cool. You kind of covered everything.
Yeah, I tried to. That was one of the main goals, because coming into the music industry and coming from the music industry, I mean, I'm sure you know there's a whole bunch of books out there on every topic of the music industry, but none of them really go from A to Z on how to do everything. A lot of them are mixing or recording or being an artist or business, but nothing really shows you like, here's where to start, here's in the middle, here's where you finish. So that was kind of my goal with the book, is to take you from point A to point Z.
Yeah, it's nicely done how you go through a lot of things that I think like, people have a lot of confusion about some of the little details of the recording process. You go through the gear, what do you actually need? Really helpful and nice work. And this was, as you were saying before, kind of started before we had lockdowns and all of that. And then instead of just binging Netflix, you went hard on this book.
Yeah. What was it? In about January, February, right before shutdown happened, I was writing blog articles for my company's blog, Sloppy Vinyl. It's an entertainment company that I helped create over the last 2 to 3 years. And it was kind of all the chapters I was doing a blog article for. And then shutdown happened and the development process in person for who I was working with kind of halted because I couldn't have contact with them. We couldn't be in the studio. So like you said, I was like everybody else and started just, okay, what do I do? Well, it's winter. I can't go outside. So let's do Netflix and Hulu and Prime and everything else. And then eventually I was like, well, I'm tired of this. I'm done watching these TV shows. And I decided to be productive. And I started taking the articles and turning them into a book, as I felt, instead of trying for people to find all these articles, let's just put them in one place. So I took those articles, expanded on what I was writing about, and turned it into The Blueprint. And it was my COVID project as my way to help artists while they were sitting at home. Hopefully they could do something productive like me instead of binge watching Netflix. And then hopefully at some point when we come out of COVID, they can use the back half of the book when you get back out and tour and that kind of stuff. Hopefully soon. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it looked like it was going to happen. And then people were like, no, wait a second.
Yeah, we had a minute there. It was looking pretty good, and then
it was looking pretty good, and then they're kind of like, "Well, I don't know about this anymore." And then New York and New Jersey said, maybe not."
Yeah.
So,
well, hey, that means there's still time for people to make the most of this.
Yes.
I think this is like something we have to do in life. It is obviously terrible and an awful situation, but to look for any sort of opportunity in our careers, like music, making music, being in the music industry is so challenging. There's so much competition. There's so much apathy for, no one cares that you want, you made an album. I don't care,
Congratulations.
Like I don't have time to listen to it. It used to be, maybe we'll give it away. And then now you can't even get people to listen to it. So
yeah, the digital streaming kind of took away the nuances of putting out an album and enjoying it, because every day there's like 40,000 or so songs that come out on Spotify and digital streaming platforms. So as a new artist, it's extremely hard to get out there. And one of the things I always hear is it's no longer an enjoyment of putting out an album. Like you used to take months to create this album, and now you get to enjoy that it's out. Now it's kind of like, oh, it's out. Now I got to worry about all the analytics and everything behind it, and you don't really get that enjoyment from it. But hopefully in this book, they learn how to get that enjoyment from it, how to get the best out of it, because digital streaming is definitely just like social media. It's good and it's bad, but it's necessary.
Yeah, the whole like time period, I think, has really sped up. You know, it used to be a band put an album out maybe every 2 years.
Yeah,
you know, you could get away with that and touring, and then a video here and there and whatever. But now we sort of expect to hear from our artists and the people we follow like every day, pretty much. Like, what's going on with you now? And
there is no like digestion period anymore. It's like the artist will put out 20, 30 songs on an album. Then the next week you release your deluxe with 15, 20 more songs. And then the next week the fans are like, well, where's your new song? It's like, I just gave you 60 songs. Like, what more could you possibly want? So there is no digestion period for music anymore. It's rapid fire microwave, which is good and bad, but I don't know. I don't know how to take it. It's hard coming from both sides of it, trying to keep the fans happy.
Yeah. It's like you said, there's good and bad. You know, there's that direct connection and interaction.
Right.
But it has sped up the life cycle of everything we do.
Yeah, because I can get it from my bedroom at midnight on my phone. I don't have to go out to the store and buy the music anymore. I just lay in bed and at midnight, there it is.
Mm-hmm. Definitely changed the way I consume music. I mean, buying CDs and stuff, I used to spend time and try to like it, try to get into it, even if it didn't hit me right away.
Right, because you spent that money on that CD, so you had to get the most out of that money. You had to go to the store. You might have only had the money for that one CD at that time, so you got to pick which artist of your favorites you want, and now that's what you're going to listen to for months until you get the money for the next one. Now $10 a month gets you every song in creation. Yeah. So there's no thing. You can listen to that album in 2 hours and now it's on to the next one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, different world.
It's crazy.
So you take us through basically everything. I thought maybe it might be kind of cool to hear like how you figured this all out, like some of your background. You've got a pretty cool story to tell, and how that all that experience has come together and resulted in this. Yeah,
so it's a little bit kind of like everything else in the music industry. It's a double-edged sword. So it seemed like a long road, but in reality, it's only been about maybe 6 years in the making since I've gotten out of college, but done internships all over the place. I started in Atlanta straight out of college at Soul Asylum Studios. That's where, when I first got there, I started as just the desk intern and then moved my way up to actually doing sessions. And I was part of music videos and different TV shows and stuff. I was actually, don't know if the episode ever aired, but I was a brief extra on like the T.I. and Tiny show because they used the studio. And I was nervous as hell. I'd never like being in front of the camera, but I got some of those opportunities. And then I was able to come back up to New York and work at the Engine Room Audio in New York with Mark Christensen, who does mastering and mixing for all the New York artists. He did 50 Cent, he did Trey Songz, he did Lloyd Banks, G Unit, whole bunch of people there. Then I had the opportunity, went back down to Atlanta and worked with a guy by the name of Slick23, who was the director of the Love and Hip Hop Atlanta stuff. So I got to do some of that. I got to work with an artist by the name of Jody Breeze, who was part of Jeezy's crew when he first came up, was like second in line. So I got to do some stuff for him. And then I got to do some stuff by an artist the name of D-Lo. I got to do a couple of his songs. Then I came back up to Jersey and started working with the company I'm at now, Water Music Publishing, who's done everybody in creation you can think of, from Beyonce and Rihanna to Fresher and Eminem's 8 Mile and Lionel Richie and a whole bunch of people. And I started there as an intern, moved my way up to head engineer and personal engineer for the owner. Then moved my way up from there, studio manager, head of the studio. And now I'm at head of A&R and artist development for Water Music. And along with some other people at the company, help create Sloppy Vinyl, which is an artist development company and full-on entertainment company that does just about everything you can think of, from graphics to videos to social media to straight on full-on artist development, and helped in the creation of that, and is head of music operations there. And we've done that for about the last 3 years. And it's kind of where I'm at now. I've done some other work here and there, but that's kind of the gist of everything that's been my career in the music industry.
Right. Oh, that's cool, man. A lot of moving, a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, I wanted to take everything head on. I always knew and heard the stories of how hard it was to get into the industry. So every opportunity I found, I wanted to take it. There was no, I only want to stay here because this is where my family is. This is where I'm living. It's no, I got a position here. Let me go down there. Oh, okay. I got a better one here. Let me go there. I was willing to go anywhere in the country to get my foot in the door, because the more connections you have, the more of a name you make, the better off you're going to be. It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. So I needed everything in all these places to get to where I am now.
Yeah, it was something I was going to ask you about, because a lot of what you said started out like I was interning here and worked my way up. Do you think, is that the case, that it was the willingness to just take on everything that they offered your way that helped you move along? What other things do you think were helpful to you that made you stand out so that people wanted to work with you, that these opportunities would keep coming up?
It was definitely my willingness to kind of do anything and everything that was asked of me. And then one thing I learned very early on, especially being an engineer and being able to sit in the studios with these different major artists and these different sessions that I was just learning from, is be a fly on the wall. Because a lot of the stories you hear, especially from engineers, is you go in gung-ho and try to prove yourself in the studio. And that's the fastest way to get kicked out of the studio, because you're interrupting the session. So my understanding of kind of just playing my role, knowing my role was, and just sitting and observing, allowed me to get into different situations faster that I probably wasn't ready for, but helped me further my career. Like very early on, I was able to sit in sessions with Bobby Creekwater, who was signed to Interscope and Eminem's album when I was at Soul Asylum, just because I was there and just friends with the engineer. I got to help on the set of an 8-Ball and MJG and Scotty ATL music video, simply because I was there and I was trusted by the owner of the studio. I was able to do these different sessions and be in places just because how I conducted myself, and I was never overstepping my boundaries. I was just doing what was asked of me, and then taking the initiative of trying to help, but also understanding this is not my time. Let me sit back and understand stuff. And that even allowed me to get an opportunity to work with Grammy award-winning artists and producers and sit in label meetings with the head of labels, just because I could just sit there like this and just like be that extra person for them to lean on. So it's just understanding your place, and me understanding that is really what got me to where I am now. Because in that, you learn and observe and you hear different things. You're like, okay, that's how these meetings go. That's how this stuff goes on. So it's really just taking the opportunity and then understanding your place and really not overstepping your boundaries.
Yeah, I like that point. This idea, like it's their time. They're the ones coming in, and to know, I mean, some of these artists are, at the top of their game, so they kind of know what they're doing a little bit.
Right.
And not
and
to come in.
You don't want to sit there and be like, oh, why don't you do this? Or why are you doing it? It's like, no, the engineer knows what he's doing. The artist knows what they want. They're working together. Just play your role, sit in the back and just watch what the engineers do. It's the best way to learn.
Yeah. Soak it up.
Exactly.
That applies to just being a musician too, like kind of understanding your part, knowing like when to step up with some of your playing, when to lay back and let the other people do their thing. And and that's often, honestly, like the hardest thing to deal with when you play with people is if you can have great players, but they just overplay, or they get in the way, or they, it becomes their show. The bass player's the star of this band all of a sudden. And
where everybody wants to have that solo, and it's like, no, it's not your time yet. This is not your place. Play along with the song and you'll get your opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very important and interesting that it carries over in so many aspects of
Right.
this and in life too. Just knowing where to be and when to step up, when to lay back.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so that has to be key and being available, being ready, being willing. It's a big part of it, right place, right time.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you about A&R actually, specifically. Like I feel like that's something that has changed quite a lot over the last couple decades or so. I mean, I picture the old days, 70s, 80s, maybe even the 90s too. They're in the clubs. They're like searching out for the bands or whatever it is. There's a buzz. Is that still the way it goes? How has this all changed in your experience? How's it different?
Definitely, that still goes on a little bit, but it's definitely been a 180 change. Like you said, in the birth of music, even early 1900s and all that stuff, 70s, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, there was no social media. There was no digital streaming. So the only way to hear these artists was to go listen to them live. So you had to go to their shows. You had to go to their cities. You had to go to their studio sessions. You had to be where they are, or else you were never going to hear these people. So you had to be on the streets. And that's why you see a lot of people coming from New York or LA or Nashville, because there are these hubs for music. You can go down the street and for blocks, all you're going to hear is music. So you had to go there. Now you can do that a little bit, but I mean, especially with COVID, you can't do that at all, really, which kind of sucks because you don't hear live music anymore. But as an A&R for me, my job is really more sitting on the computer and just searching through all of the DSPs and all the social media. And it's just now, instead of whoever can get on the shows, it's millions and millions of artists that you could sift through in a day, going through YouTube and SoundCloud and Spotify and Apple and Tidal. They're everywhere. So even as an A&R now, it's become a little bit more daunting, because it's not like, oh, a couple people are talking about this guy in New York, let's go see him. Some people are talking about this guy in Jersey, let's go see him. It's no, you could fall across somebody on YouTube that nobody's ever heard of that could be the next greatest sensation, but you have to make that decision. There's no buzz around this person. They might just be a phenomenal singer or instrumentalist. So it's a little bit more difficult because of the volume, but it's a little bit easier because I'm not having to necessarily go out and see these people until they're playing live or they get to a certain point, or I'm maybe in that city. I can kind of just sit in my room or in the studio and just search on my phone and find these people. So it's a little bit easier, but it's a little bit more daunting because there's so many artists now.
Yeah. Yeah. With, it used to be even just, there was sort of a bar of, you put out a CD like that.
Right.
Took some effort. So just to do that showed some level of commitment, at least like in the 90s,
Exactly. It took you months to make that 3 to 4 song EP that you're selling out of the back of your car. Now it could take you a day and you got 15 songs that you release all at once. And now the next day you're doing it again. I mean, that's how we get some of the best artists now. I mean, the story behind Russ is every week on Friday until he made it, he put out a new song. Like that wasn't even fathomable 15 years ago. You couldn't do that.
Right.
Like it took you 3 weeks to maybe get one song because you had to buy the studio time and get in the studio and mix it. I mean, it's all changed. It's craziness now. It's the Wild West, just online.
I imagine you're not just going on Google and writing like cool new artists or anything like that. So I bet the like totally like randomly pulling someone out of obscurity is pretty rare. What kinds of things prompt you to actually check out artists? Because that's, let's face it, like with just the sheer volume, you have to really like just cut people out. You can't look at everybody. And there has to be like, I guess, maybe things that prompt you to do it, and maybe things that make you say, I'm not even going to bother with this.
Right. So it's a little bit twofold. And this is going to always differ depending on who you ask, especially in this new digital analytical age. There are some A&Rs and some people that are only going to look at the numbers. So if you don't have X amount of numbers on your social media or your streaming platforms, they're not even going to look at you. But for me, that's a little bit of a secondary aspect, because I look at it as, if you can sing or you can write great songs or you're a great artist, I can build your social media. So your social media, your numbers are secondary to me, because you can have all the followers in the world, but if you can't sing, can you really be an artist? So for me, it's being an A&R for a publishing company. I more look for songwriters and producers. So it's a little bit different. I kind of listen to everything and then see who I can pick out based on that criteria. But when it comes to just artists, I have to like your music. You have to be interesting to me, because I'm going to be the one working with you. So if I don't like your music or I don't like your sound, it's going to be harder for me, or almost impossible for me to work with you, because now I'm doing something that's against the grain for myself. So if I like you as an artist and I believe in your music, then that's what entices me to work with you. And then I'll dig deeper. Like, what is your story? What is your social media? What is this, that, and the other thing? But to me, all that stuff is secondary, because the music comes first. People will gravitate to what they like musically, and you can always grow those numbers second.
Right. So, I guess it's helpful to have some of that, but you still need, obviously, because there's a lot of people, I guess, that have huge followings, and maybe they are doing musically related stuff, but it's not really like you're going to listen to their music. It's more like you enjoy watching the personality on whatever platform it is. Right. It's kind of another.
Exactly. That's why you see a whole lot of celebrity personalities or social media stars trying to do music now, because they have millions of followers. So they expect, I have 3 million followers. I put out this album. Everybody's going to listen to it. Then everybody listens to it, and you're like, well, this is not all that great. So now you can't be an artist anymore, because the music's not there. You just have all these followers. I mean, we see that all the time in this new age. Every social media person wants to be an artist and a singer, and it's not always great. You have to have that talent. Talent always rises to the top. You can't fake singing ability or being able to play an instrument. You can fake social media numbers.
Yeah, that's very true.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So if you're looking at musicians, artists, and stuff, I would think there's some, you're really investing, right? Would you say, this is something I've kind of said to people before, when you're trying to get on a label or someone to work with you, they're really investing in you, almost like a business would invest in another business. Is it important that they have some sort of momentum, like they are either getting the plays, or they're getting some monies coming in for them, they're selling some merch or whatever people sell anymore? Is that an important aspect for you to consider it almost like a business investment?
In the beginning, if I'm looking for somebody to develop, that's not necessarily something I look at. It's always beneficial if you have that, but not every artist is necessarily at the point in the beginning to do that. A lot of them focus more on the music and think of that stuff will come next, which it does. Because if you have no name behind you, who's really going to buy your merchandise? So for me, that's not a factor, but this is definitely something that I talk about in the book in a couple of different chapters, how to get on the radar of these people. We always say, and people always will hear, yes, it's the music business, but it's really the business of music. All of these labels and all of these companies are just like every other company in the world. They have bills that they have to pay. They have a bottom line that they have to hit. So as bad as this seems, artists are kind of their commodity for these businesses. It's how they make music. So for certain people to look at you, you have to have maybe something going on. But again, talent always rises. So if you have that talent, we can always develop that second half of it, because people will listen to the music. But as an artist, if you really want to get on somebody's map, you have to have one of those two things. You either have to have undeniable talent, or you have to have that following behind you. The best case of kind of a little bit of both is when Fabio and Pop Smoke were coming out of Brooklyn. They necessarily didn't always have the music at first. That came later when they released their hit singles, but they had Brooklyn on lock. Everybody knew about them. They brought hundreds of people out to these shows. They were packing out their shows. So everybody was like, we have to go see these guys. Who are these guys? Everybody's talking about them in Brooklyn. So if you have that, that's how you get on somebody's radar too. Because if you can bring out your city, those are true fans that are going to buy your merchandise. They're going to buy your music. Where, just like we were talking about a little bit before, you just release your music and hope people are going to listen to it. All those followers might not be actual fans. So it's a little bit of both. If you have that backing, like you said, about people buying merchandise and that fan base behind you, you might be on a radar way faster than if you have millions of followers, because you can show a true fan base, and true fans will share your music, buy your merchandise, go to your shows, and that's going to generate the money that the labels and the companies are looking for.
Right. Yeah, I think that's an important thing for people to consider as artists. Like, what are you offering? You know, it's not just, you know, you made something. Like what is it though? Like, how does it stand out? And to really think about the other people you're going to be working with, it's their career. So you have to bring something to the table.
Exactly. One thing that I always tell artists that I learned from on an interview with Lenny S from Rock Nation, A&R for Rock Nation, is as an artist, you have to have one or two things. People either have to want to be you or have to believe you. So they either have to believe the persona that you're portraying, or they have to want to be the persona you're portraying. If you don't have one of those two things, people aren't going to gravitate towards you as an artist or your music. You have to be believable, or you have to be such an icon that people are like, I want to be that person. That's who I strive to be.
Yeah, you know, just in thinking about that, actually, I can almost like, you can go through like some big artists and just sort of decide, all right, well, this one we believe in you know, that you touch us, you feel what you're saying, and this one, I want to live like you.
Exactly. It's the case of like the rappers. All the rappers, they kind of want to be them because they see the flashy life. But if I don't believe your lyrics, I couldn't care less what you're doing. But as a rapper, if I believe your lyrics, I don't really care what you're doing. You could be away. It's like The Weeknd or Kendrick or J. Cole or somebody. They believe their music, but you never see them personally. So I don't care. I don't want to be you. I believe what you're saying. But then you see somebody like Bieber or Chris Brown or somebody like that, and you're like, I just want to be you. You seem like you're living a really good life. I want that life. So it's one or the other. But all those major artists have one or the other.
And I guess having both is a special combination.
Oh, if you have both, you're out of here. Then you're like Michael Jackson or Prince or Drake or somebody like that. Yeah, just on that new level. Drake, I think he just smashed the single day streaming records that I'm
Kanye
sure
just smashed.
I was about to say, I'm sure he did. I know people are going back and forth with whose album is better, Kanye or Drake, and it's for me, it's a preference. So they're two people. They're two people that they're just on such a level that they're kind of always gonna get attention and excitement. Exactly. I mean, Drake was able to tease his album for a year, well, because of health issues and stuff, but still sell crazy amounts of stuff. And Kanye was able to preview his album in arenas across the country and then still sell it all over the place. Like, who's able to do a rollout where you're playing your demos at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta? Like, who can do that?
He's a master at getting people to pay attention to him and do things that get people thinking.
He's a marketing genius.
So that's obviously a big part of it. And I know a lot of people, artists, kind of shy away from that kind of stuff. Like, oh, my image, the music speaks for myself, or I don't do the business. It's unfortunately, the reality is that's part of it, and
you have to do both. Or if you're an artist, like I said, like a J. Cole or Weeknd or Kendrick or even Party Next Door, when he was releasing music, if you don't want to be in the spotlight until you have to have that marketing machine behind you. That's why you see TDE with Kendrick, they'll do all this stuff, and you're not going to see Kendrick till his album's coming out. Same thing with Cole, same thing with Weeknd. We haven't seen Weeknd since the Super Bowl because he's not doing anything. Next time you see Weeknd, you know an album's coming soon. Like, it's just who they are. But that marketing behind them is so astronomical that you don't care. You're just excited when they come back out because you're like, We're getting new music.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, and there's something to be said too for that. If they were doing stuff every month, like you kind of have to do earlier on in your lifespan as an artist,
Right.
it loses its power. You know, there's something to be said about making them wait, building anticipation.
Right. But you have to get to that level to do it.
Right.
If you're just coming up and you're like, oh, I'm dropping this and then go away, people are going to forget about you. And they're going to be like, you pop back up in a year with new music. They're going to be like, wait, who's that? Who's this? We don't remember him. But when these guys do it, everybody's on the edge of their seat. Like when Kendrick came out with his song a couple weeks ago and started talking about the new stuff, everybody's now on the edge of their seat waiting for this album to come out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool. I wonder when you get to that point, you know, what's the magic?
I don't know. A couple Grammy nomination and award wins and platinum records into your career would be my guess. Not a lot of people are able to do that now. I mean, think about how long it took Eminem to do that. Now you don't hear from him at all, and all of a sudden, album's out and everybody goes crazy.
Right.
There's only certain people that can do that, and it's not a lot of them. That's like the 0.5% of that 1% that are able to just, here's an album, have fun.
Well, that's definitely one side of the artist journey, you know, being the superstar and celebrity type thing. But you also do some work on some of the stuff that's a little more behind the scenes with like the publishing and the syncing. How is that different? Because here you're not pushing I could be wrong, but I assume you're not pushing like the person, I want to be that person, I want to be like that person. How does that, is there a different approach? Maybe I'll ask.
I talk about this in the book so I can, because I have publishing chapters and different chapters on how things work in the industry and the differences in artists and writers and stuff. So to answer your question, it's a little bit twofold. If it's just publishing on like an artist songs, you kind of have to push that artist to make them popular in the limelight. So when you get those syncs or get the publishing on the back end, they're worth more. They can get more for it. However, if you're talking about like a producer or a songwriter, it's kind of just letting them be themselves and developing their songs and their production and their sound. And then being like, okay, I can hear this artist on this song, or I can hear this artist taking this beat. And then you kind of shop them to those artist managers or A&Rs or labels and wait for them to give you the yay or nay. Or you take an artist song and try to get it in a TV commercial or a movie or different stuff like that. So it's a little bit more behind the scenes. But for writers and producers, it's not so much about the face of who's making it, because there are hundreds of songwriters and producers that if I were to tell you their names, you're going to be like, I don't know who that is. But they've written all the songs you've heard, number one on the Billboard charts across genres. But then at the same time, artists have that publishing and sync too. You hear their songs on video games and you hear them on radio and TV and ESPN. But to get there, you have to push that artist. Like it wasn't until, perfect example is that ESPN song that Jack Harlow had for a while. But Jack Harlow had to get to that point where he was a name person and have that big album before that song came on ESPN. He didn't just pop up there. Just like in the opposite case, in Neo's case, he started as a writer. And then when they realized, oh, he can do all this stuff too, now he's an artist. And then pushing him as an artist made his songwriting even better. So it depends on what you're trying to do and what the artist wants to do. There are a lot of producers that just want to be producers, sit in their room, make beats, and that's that. There's a lot of songwriters that want to sit in their room, write songs, record it, and that's that. I don't want to be in front of the camera. There's a lot of artists that want to be in front of the camera and couldn't care less about writing the songs and other stuff like that. All of this stuff I break down in the book so you can understand each aspect of it and what the publishing splits are. Because if you're an artist that don't write your songs, you can forget about your publishing. You're not getting any of that. But if you're a songwriter and all you do is write songs, hold on to that publishing. That's when we see people selling their catalogs for hundreds of millions of dollars now.
Yes, I love the famous example of Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. Paul McCartney telling Michael Jackson to get into, publishing, and so he bought the Beatles.
Yep. To do all of that stuff, because if you don't, you're not going to get any of it. And that's when you start hearing the artists cry about their publishing and their splits and everything like that. It's, well, you don't write any of your songs. It's not, and you can tell which artists do and which artists don't. I still remember being in the music industry. I was dating somebody that wasn't, but had an affinity for a female artist. I'm not going to name the artist, but she had an affinity for this artist. And we had a whole conversation of, she writes her song, she doesn't. And I'm like, you're talking to somebody that's in the industry. I know who writes her songs. She's not always doing this. This is how this stuff works. So people don't always realize what's going on behind the scenes. But as an artist, and again, I break this down in the music publishing chapter of the book, know who's getting your splits and write as much as you can, because the more you write, the more you own that song.
Yeah, that's the other end of it, I guess. And when you're thinking about like putting something in film, TV commercials, is there, I guess, there must be some kind of like, this is an established artist, you want their song in your commercial or your thing. And then there must be where the more like the people you said that don't really want to be the artist, they want to just write the songs. I guess in that case, it's a little more like, we need a song like this. Can you put that together for us? It's sort of like a different thing they're looking for. Do we want the artist association, or are we just looking for this particular type of song or sound?
Right. And it depends on what exactly it is. So like when you hear things, because this game just came out, when you think about Madden and the new tracks that are on there all the time, they're going for those big name artists. When you think about ESPN or the NFL or these big TV shows, they're kind of going for that name as well. But then when you think of maybe some of the movie stuff or some of the TV commercials, it's less about the artist behind it, and it's more about just the sound and aesthetic we want behind our thing. Like the two biggest examples I love to tell people are the McDonald's and the Arby's theme. Like, those aren't big artists, but you know what those are. Now, if I were to tell you that Pusha T did both of those, you would be surprised, because you're like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. That's not him rapping it. No, but he wrote those two theme songs. So you could be a big artist that writes it, and people may not know it, but it really comes down to what that company is looking for. Do they want just an aesthetic where it's just, oh, I want this kind of beat behind it, or do I want to pull this big name and play this song because everybody's going to understand who it is and they know it? Or they might just say, I want this artist, I want this kind of song, record it, kind of like Whitney Houston did I forget the name of the movie, but the movie she was in.
The Bodyguard. Yeah.
Where she did the whole big song for that. Or
which is Dolly Parton's song.
Yeah, and then there was another one. I'm blanking on the name of the artist, but the story is she didn't want to do the song at all, and they convinced her to do the song, and it was the biggest song of her career. So there's stuff like that. It really depends on the movie and the company what they're looking for.
Right. Yeah, and I guess if you have that going for you, that's kind of like that thing feeds itself. It's almost advertising for it. I do remember. How big that song was when it came out. That was everywhere. That was it. And it's also everything in the movies. So that's
exactly
a pretty good win-win there.
Yep.
That's cool. Yeah, I think that's there's so much out there now. People, so much content, especially when you start looking at streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, they got their individual, exclusive series and stuff. There's so much music that needs to be made. It's definitely, as much as I guess like everything's opened up so wide that it's almost made it really tough to come through. There's still so many other avenues that are yet to be explored, and so many more opportunities to make it as a musician, and just in music in general. And I think that's a cool thing that you're doing too, is you've really diversified your work, and especially now with the book, you're even into like education.
Right.
That. So.
Yeah.
Having like these, I like what you're kind of showing, that there's so many ways to do this. And even if maybe one isn't going to do it for you, you can cobble together a lot of different angles to make this your life if you've got that hustle and that drive.
Yeah, that's one thing I had to learn about the music industry, because being young, we all just think the only part of the music industry is being the artist or being the producer. Like, you don't think about anything else. There's so many different avenues that you can be in. That's kind of how I fell into engineering. Was I couldn't be the artist, but I was recording all my friends. So it's like, oh, this is actually something I can do in the music industry. Let me go do that. And then through that, I learned, oh, there's management, and there's A&Ring, and there's publishing, there's all this different stuff. And as an artist, it's the same thing. Maybe you're not the most successful frontman artist, but you're one of the greatest songwriters of all time. Maybe you're not great at writing songs, but you're that personality that's out there in the front. Maybe you start somewhere and build your way up. I mean, Kanye didn't start as a rapper. He had to make his way as a producer, and then was standing on tables rapping for people before he got his album shot. Like, there's other people, like we said before, Neo was a songwriter, then became an artist, and is now both. Meghan Trainor was a songwriter until L.A. Reid found that All About That Bass, nobody else could sing that song better than her. Then she became an artist. There's so many different avenues to go that people don't realize. Until they learn about it, it's kind of just frontman artist. That's it. But you can do so many different things. And even like we just were talking about, maybe your songs don't necessarily hit in the beginning, but you get that sync in that one commercial or that one movie or that one whatever. Now everybody knows your song and you're out of here. So there's so many different ways you can go about it. And these are different things that I mentioned in the book, the different avenues to take to get to where you want to be. It's just like everything else in life. Maybe A doesn't work, B or C might be your next option, and then you can get back to A. It's however you can fit into the industry. Don't think one is the end all be all, because you can do so many more things, either as somebody behind the scenes or somebody in the front of everything.
Yeah, that's cool. I think it's really inspiring, and it's comforting. It's good to know, that there's a lot of different ways to do it. So you've gotten a chance to work with all kinds of people at all different types of levels. Are there any traits that you find that set people apart, that the people that are on that next level possess? Any commonalities you've noticed? Work ethic.
It's the one thing that, as unfortunate it is to say now, the younger generation doesn't always have that. They kind of expect things to happen without really putting in the work. But all the artists that are on that top level that I've worked with are just crazy workaholics all the time. Like, one of the things I tell people, when I was working with Elle Varner in 2019, her album was done recorded. Like, we were done. We were just putting it together. But then for 2 weeks, we would sit in the studio 12, 14, 16 hours a day for 2 weeks, 6 days a week, just constructing song sequence and rearranging beats and different stuff like that to get it perfect. It's not a lot of people are doing that. Or Michael Jackson, who mixed the song 92 times before he got it the way he wanted it to. Or Kanye, who did the same thing, would mix the song, go to the club, play the song, and go back to the studio and remix it because he didn't like how it sounded. There are so many things.
Or the arena.
I was about to say, or he plays the demo in the arena, and when you get the album, it's not the same songs.
Yeah.
Or he puts it out, takes it off, puts it back up with different songs, takes it off and puts it back up with different songs. It's just, there's such a work ethic and a process behind these big artists. Like, one of the ones we always compare to in our company is Drake. Even when Drake doesn't have an album out, he's got 1 or 2 songs out as a feature or something else, and he's on everything. He's done hip hop, he's done R&B, he's done Afro beats, he's done dance records. He's always on something, so his name is out there. It's the work ethic of these people. It's just nonstop all the time. without this kind of work ethic, people just go away and fall off. I mean, and I don't know how true this is anymore, but a couple years ago, who was it? Ice-T that did that Netflix documentary on hip hop where he went and interviewed a whole bunch of different people. One of the things Dr. Dre said was at that time, I think he could count on one hand the amount of days he's been out of the studio since he started with NWA. It's like that kind of work ethic, or the work ethic of the owner of the company I work with. He tells stories where he was in the studio with M and Dre and they would spend hours just mixing a hi-hat, one sound, just the hi-hat. And if you know mixing music, you know what a hi-hat sounds like. There's not a whole lot of variation to it. So to spend hours on that one sound would be maddening for most people. But that work ethic is what's there. And you got to think of the level of what these people are. I mean, the other thing I tell people who don't like to rehearse for live shows, because a lot of artists now think I can get on stage and just rock it. Beyonce. Everybody knows Beyonce. Everybody knows how astronomical she is. She did a show for like a 3-hour performance and rehearsed for 2 weeks for that 1 3-hour performance. Like, she's one of the greatest artists of all time. You wouldn't think somebody like that is doing that. But the work ethic of these people is nonstop. The other story about Beyonce is she was so focused in the studio once, she didn't realize she didn't eat for 3 days. It's just, that work ethic and that mind frame is what separates the greats from just the average person.
Yeah, that's like this misconception I think we have. We do this with art for some reason, that it's like this magical thing that comes down, divine inspiration. But I'm glad you say that. Like, it's the work. Like, there's no way people get to that level just on talent. I mean, maybe they start off with a little bit, but I find myself like it's the hard work all the time. That, like, talent is nice, give you a jump, but that's about it. It's right. Really about the sweat and the blood and the tears.
It really is. I mean, I come from a sports background, so the old sports adage is always hard work will outbeat talent when talent doesn't work hard. So you can be the greatest singer in the world, but if you don't work hard, that person that might not be the best singer, that's going to work harder than you, is going to outdo you any day, because they're willing to put in that work and willing to do that.
Yeah, I really believe that, because for myself, I started playing guitar at 14. I knew nothing about music. I didn't understand when you sing that you were singing notes that you played on the guitar. I didn't understand that if I had a guitar, I could play the songs I heard on the radio. Because I thought you had to be like struck by lightning on a mountaintop to be like a musician and artist, And that was just it. You had a superpower. And there was a lot of like fantasy around a lot of artists back then too, where they could you didn't see them every day like you do now. So you get like one interview and they'd be like, it just kind of came to me. And
right. It just came, we played this song in the studio and now it's the #1 hit in the world. And it's like, wait, that's not exactly how that worked, but okay. It's a nice interview story.
Yeah. But I think it's empowering, really, because for me, I was able to come at it with nothing and learn it and figure it out. And it wasn't easy, and it's still hard for me. Every time I make music, it's challenging. And even if I think it's going to be easy, there's something you've run into and you're like, oh. And I haven't spoken to anyone that said, oh, it's easy. I just show up and I got it. It
just happens. Yeah. No, I come from the same background. I'm not musically inclined at all. I can't sing. I can't play instruments. I can't read music or anything. So being an engineer, I had to learn how to manage around that. Even to this day, I can't do any of that stuff. I know what it's supposed to sound like, but I can't necessarily tell you how to play it, or I can't necessarily tell you, like, these notes are here, but I can tell you that that's wrong and how to do it better. So I've had to find that fix around it. And just like you said, everything is always hard. I mean, I've been mixing and doing engineering for almost 10 years at this point, probably even longer than that, almost 12. Wow. And even now I'll walk into the studio and be like, all right, let's mix this song. Think I'm going to get it done in a couple hours. And 3 days later, I'm still banging my head against the wall, trying to get these sounds to work correctly. And everybody's like, how you doing? I'm like, just leave me alone right now. I'm figuring this out.
Yeah, it's not just open that template or those presets.
Drop the song in there and hit a few buttons and bam, the song. It's all right. Now you got to fix this, and now that we did that, I got to fix this, and we got to. It's a lot of work, and people don't realize how long it takes to actually do some of this stuff.
Yeah, but the good news with that is the hard work thing. It's a choice. You can make the decision to do that, to spend the time and just put in the energy. And like you said, like the sports analogy is great. Exercise is great. Like no one can work out for you,
Exactly. Otherwise everybody be the greatest athlete in the world.
Right. And in truth, like, if you want to be like healthy, fit, be a good athlete, like you kind of know what to do. Like the information's out there. The information's out there with music too. It's on YouTube. You can find it.
Yeah.
And it's not a crazy dark secret.
No.
It's really just the work.
It's really just putting in that work. I even mentioned that in the book. It's how I learned, and it's the greatest resource you have is YouTube University. Mm-hmm. Anything you want to find about music or anything, just go to YouTube and immediately hundreds of thousands of videos about anything you want to know, from the most simplest thing of kind of some of the things I explained in the book, what an EQ is, what a microphone is, to how to, parallel compress vocals through 3 different buses with reverb on it. It's like you can find anything. And that's when I was self-teaching before I went to school for it. That's what I did. I was just on YouTube all day looking at different videos on how to get stuff right. I didn't know how to EQ or compress a vocal. I didn't know how to make instruments fit in the space together. And it's some of the things that I wanted to put in this book and give those diagrams. And that's why I start the book with, what is a microphone? Here are the different kinds of microphones, how to record yourself properly, like where to place the microphone and the different vocal types. And this is all stuff I had to learn myself before I went to school. So it was like, okay, I didn't know there was a proper way to record vocals. I just kind of thought microphone, face, go. And no, that's not it at all. At all. I just kind of thought, like you said, you drop everything into a template and bam, magic. It sounds good. No, that's not how it is at all. And that's why I had to start the book with that. Here's where to start. Here's how to do it. Here's what this stuff does. Here's the basis. If you need more help, I even give you examples in the book of the YouTube channels that taught me everything I know. Well, minus the internships, but it's where I started. YouTube University.
Yeah.
It's a guide.
It is. It's helped me, and man, even everything from like trying to fix my lawnmower.
Exactly. Anytime I need to know how to do something, it's either YouTube or Google. It's one of those two.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know. I'm a teacher. I believe in teaching how to learn, and where to get good information and how to put it together and how to know what to look for. How to know also, like, when you're kidding yourself,
right?
Well, you're really just avoiding the work and the practices.
Yeah.
I went through a period of that myself where I was being productive, but in a procrastinating type of way.
I definitely had to learn that, because I tell people all the time, I'm the laziest productive person you will ever meet in your life. I will find the easiest way to get around stuff, because I just would rather get it done fast. But it's the fact that put your mind to it and get it done. You got to do it. And sometimes those things don't always work. So you got to find a workaround. And you being a musician, when you're recording songs and stuff, sometimes you have the image or the sound in your head, and well, that's not how I just played it. So how do I fix that? Or the things like when I'm mixing, it's kind of like, all right, everything's in my template. I have everything, but my template is not working for this song. All right, well, scrap this and let's start over and figure out what's going to work. It's putting your mind down, put your head down, getting the work done, and just figuring out how to get the work done. That's really what it comes down to.
Yep, you are so right with that.
Yep.
Well, cool, man. That's a lot of great information. I'm really happy that you've shared your story, and just also, it's great. You've got the book, you got the blueprint, and it's super helpful, but at the same time, you got to take it with that dose of hard work. And I think that reality check you offer comes through in the reading and in your work and in this discussion, that You can have all the answers, but you gotta put the work in. And I think you do a nice job in just taking us through the steps. A lot of things that, especially in the earlier chapters, that I think get forgotten, kind of. Like if you sometimes it's easy to forget like how far we've come.
Right.
The example I like to tell people is when my grandmother got a computer, probably early 2000s, to do like email, and I'm telling her, all right, so just move the mouse there and click on the email icon.
Right.
And she's like,
what?
What do you mean? It's like she didn't know that when you move the mouse, the arrow
was the mouse.
yeah. And like I'm like, okay, all right, so let's take a step back here.
Exactly.
And same thing like in teaching music, where it'd be like, okay, so put the kick here on the one, and then put another kick here on the and they're like, what do you mean the one?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm transported back to myself when I didn't know that notes were what you sing. I thought you just say the words with that attitude, and it sounded like the song.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's how I was with mixing. Again, I didn't know what mixing was. I kind of thought, put it in here, record it. It sounds amazing. No, you got to do all this other stuff to it. And again, when I started out, I didn't know there were different kind of microphones. I didn't know there were different kind of plugins. I didn't know there was different stuff and different ways to record. So that's why I wanted to start the book with that, because everybody wants to do the stuff in their bedroom now. And even now you can record an entire song off your phone, and that's all you need. Like, it's crazy now, the digital stuff that you can do. But still, as you do this stuff, there's proper ways to do it, and there's equipment that you need for it, and everything is not the same. So that's why I wanted to start with the basics. This is what this is. Here are the different types. Here's how it's going to work for different people. Once that's done, here's how to do this stuff properly. And then here are the next steps. I mean, people don't think about the recording process and the mixing process, and people might not even master their songs anymore. And then from there, it's just, do you even think about copywriting your songs? Do you know how to? It's, how do you release your music? Like, what are the different channels to do so? Like, that's why I wanted to take you step by step in this, because these are the things that artists don't think about. They kind of just think about record, release, but it's not that simple. Even though it looks that simple, it's really not.
Right. And I would say too, you've had some success with the book too. That kind of proves what you're doing is worthwhile, right? Yeah,
it definitely does. It was definitely a surprise, the reaction I got from it, being a first-time author and not really being known to the public as because I've been behind the scenes. So having that kind of initial response to it from the public and from the industry and that kind of stuff was really a blessing and a surprise.
How was it for you just as a writer? Just grammatically, structurally, how did that work out for you? I'm sure that was a learning process too, right?
It was, but writing has always been something I've been good at. It's always been easy for me. Like going through school, I was one of those kids that can knock out a paper in a day and then edit it once or twice and be good. So writing has always been easy for me, but writing a book is a totally different thing. Like once I wrote it, I was in the first steps of editing it myself. So, okay, I wrote 200 and some odd pages. Now I have to edit and rewrite 200 and some odd pages. And I was going through this and doing it myself before I found the publisher. And then the publisher started editing it, which is a whole separate process. And then the things that you don't think of was all the citations and the note taking and all the different things that you got to go through, making sure it's not copyrighted, and the free use stuff, and being able, you can use names and use examples. And it was really a bigger undertaking than I thought it was. I will definitely say it probably took me significantly longer to go through the editing process than to actually sit down and just knock out the writing form of it. Right. There were so many times I would spend weeks just editing and then have to have this book of just red ink. And it was just like, all right, now I got to rewrite this whole thing. Yeah. So yeah, it was an ordeal. I really didn't think I understood what I was getting myself into.
Maybe that was a good thing, though. You're right. Sometimes not
it
knowing the
was.
dangerous roads ahead.
Yeah, because I think if I knew the editing process and the copyright stuff behind it, I might have been a little bit more like in a trepidation to go out and actually do this. Yeah. But because I just like took it head on and was like, all right, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to edit it. And then it's like, all right, let's do it. It kind of was like, all right, I want to get it done. And like we said, it was putting your head down and doing it. Like I made it a point that, all right, I have an entire day from the time I wake up to the time I'm going to go to sleep. I got to get this edit done. So I would edit the book and then I spend the next day. And it was an ordeal. It's a lot different than an academic paper of 3 pages.
Right. Hey, sometimes it's good to just not know until you get there, right? You'll figure it out once you get in. I think that's better sometimes because you're not as apprehensive to do it. You kind of just take it head on. Where if you knew what was ahead of you, you might be like, wait a second, do I really want to do this? Right. Hey, that's cool. I'm glad you did it. I'm glad you powered through it. And it reads well. It's smooth. It's fluid, and it makes a lot of sense. And the order of everything is nice, and it goes right through all the way. So, congrats on it. It's really some great work you did. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And so we can send people to your site, right? Is that the best place to find you? Where do you like to send people to see your work? To find me, I either send them to either LinkedIn or Instagram, which are both, you can find me on either one of those platforms by just my name, Frank DeMilt. And then if you want to get the book, it's on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon. Just type in The Blueprint and it's there. And you can learn how to be an artist and what it's going to take to be an artist and learn the process of the digital music industry, which is way different than the music industry of 10 years ago. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a great point. I mean, this is we're in need of a current thing, especially these last few years. We really need the current look and what to do. And the landscape is always changing. It's changing by the day. Even since the book has been published a couple months ago, I'm sure there's been different algorithms and different social media stuff that I'm going to have to put in volume 2 that have changed. Because I know even from the beginning of me writing it to before it was published, I had to change all of when I mentioned about TikTok because Trump was no longer in office. So the TikTok ban wasn't relevant anymore and algorithms changed and SoundCloud did something else. And right up to release date, I was changing things because social media and DSPs were changing how they were run. So even to the point where TikTok decided they wanted to partner with all these major labels, which didn't happen when I first started writing the book, but completely changed the landscape of how you do music on TikTok. So it's ever changing and it changes by the day. It's nuts. That's cool stuff, man. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk. I've definitely learned a lot, picked up on a lot of good advice, and I think people will enjoy it. Definitely check out the book, The Blueprint, The Bible for Becoming a Successful Performing Artist in the Digital Age by Frank DeMilt. Frank, thanks so much, man. Oh, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a good day.